my personal experiences on keeping bettas and how I have found the best ways to keep them. I think two of the most common questions I've seen on Facebook groups for new betta keepers are, one, what size tank can I use or keep a betta in? And two, what temperature do I keep them at? I actually just realized there's a third one, and that's, can you put bettas with other fish? So I'll make sure to cover all three of those. We're going to start off with tank size though. So for tank size, most people are going to hate me for saying this, but bare minimum tank size, I would put a betta in by itself, nothing else, with live plants. Now this is going to be me practicing what I preach because this is how I keep most of mine at the moment. 2.5 gallon tank with a heater, with a filter, planted up so they have plenty of places to hide and cover to go to. Now most people are probably going to be mad at me for saying 2.5 because the common number people throw at you is 5 gallon. Now the price difference between a 2.5, a 3 gallon, and a 5 is not drastically different. The only difference is size. The only reason I'm using 2.5s is because I don't have the room to put a bunch of 5 gallons in my bedroom. Now that being said, if I had the room, all of my bettas would be in 5 gallon tank. So just remember, if you're going to keep a betta in any size tank, it needs a heater, it needs some kind of filter. Now just to talk about tank sizes a little bit more. If you're a new fish keeper, and a betta is your first fish, I'm going to recommend you get a 5 or 10 gallon tank. I would lean towards the 10 gallon more because with the bigger size tank, if something does go wrong in a fish tank, the larger the size tank, usually the more time you have to deal with it. But if you're a new time fish keeper and you have an ammonia spike or you have a nitrate spike or have something go wrong with your tank, if you have the 10 gallon, you have a slightly larger safety net than if you had the 5 or a smaller size. So if you're a new time fish keeper and you're getting your first fish and it's going to be a betta, I would say get a 10 gallon. You could get away with a 5, but I'm going to say go 10 because you have that safety net and they're already a hardy fish, so they'll already be able to keep up with some of the first time fish keeper mistakes. But if you have that 10 gallon tank, you're going to have an even more large safety net and you should be able to course correct and figure out what's going wrong before too much harm is done to the fish, if any harm at all. Like I said, the bettas that I've got are super hardy. They've come from PetSmart, they've come from Petco, they've come from places online. So I've got them from all walks of life, and they've all been hardy enough to withstand a fish-in cycle, so I know they can handle some ammonia and some nitrate or nitrites in their tank. The other added benefit if you're a new time fish keeper and you have the 10 gallon is you're probably going to want to get more fish. So having that 10 gallon opens up more avenues to allow you to keep more fish in the same aquarium as your first fish. So again, first time fish keepers, please start out with a 10 gallon. That way you can course correct and fix those ammonia spikes and those nitrite spikes. Guarantee you, if you're just starting out keeping fish, you're not going to know what's going on when you check your water for the first time with your test kit and you're like, my test is deep green or deep purple or this deep orange color, which is all about cycle, which I'll get into cycling tanks in a later video. I'm going to do a whole series on that kind of stuff. That being said, if you've been keeping fish for, let's say, a year or longer and you've done all your research, you can probably do the 5 gallon tank. Will know how the cycle works, you'll know how ammonia, all that stuff goes. You already have that knowledge base and you'll be able to course correct slightly better than someone just starting out. I wouldn't recommend anybody going below 5 if they haven't been fish keeping for at least, I would say, 5 years. Nano tanks, which again 5 and 10 are nano tanks, but to me they're slightly, nano is anything under 5, but I know that's not widely accepted by most people. They say 1500, but for me anything under 5 gallons is a nano in my opinion. Again, my opinion. You can think what you want. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But for me, anything under 5 is a nano. And I've had the video on nano tanks before. They're more of an advanced hobbyist type thing because they are so much smaller and typically require more maintenance. So new time fish keepers, I would say 10 gallon. Intermediate fish keepers, the people that have fish keeping for a couple years and know about the cycles and everything, can get away with a 5. And if you've been keeping fish for over 5 years, you can probably get away with these smaller sizes, but they are more comfortable in the slightly larger sizes. So try and do 5s, do 2.5s, 3 gallons only if you can't get the bigger sizes. But the price difference between a 2.5 to a 3 gallon is like $5 maybe. So if you spend the extra 10 to 15, you can get a 5-gallon and you're fine. PetSmart has some pretty decent ones. All the Betta tanks I have came from PetSmart. They all come with a filter. They do not come with heaters, but you can get a heater cheap enough on Amazon. They have presets that keep the water around 76 to 78, so that will be fine if you can't get anything else and you don't want something big and bulky in the tank. And just remember, like all fish, bigger is always better when it comes to tank size. I will pay you royalties, John from KG Tropicals, because that's your shtick. You say that all the time. So I'll get you a royalty check in the mail, don't worry. Not really though, because I'm broke, because I've been out of work since March. I will, however, make sure you get a link in the description of the video, so everyone go check out KG Tropicals videos, because they do Betta content all the time. Lisa's the queen of Bettas, so go watch their stuff. I'll put a link to their Betta playlist in the description. Now, moving on to the second most asked question that I've seen in Facebook groups about Bettas. I'm in like 30 fish groups at this point. A good number of them are Betta groups, so I've seen time Betta keepers always asking, what temperature do I keep my tank at? I have seen a range from literally 68 all the way up to 82. Now, usually the range I've seen most people recommend is 76 to 82 for Bettas. This is again going to be based on my personal keeping of fish and observing mine and seeing what temperatures they're comfortable in. I would shorten that range to 76 to 80. Now, I'm going to break this down into 3 different parts here. The 76 crew. I'm including 76 here because if you keep community tanks, I think personally 76 is like the average temperature most people are keeping their community tanks at. Now again, this is my personal experience. Most community tanks typically include tetras, and tetras like warm-ish around 74, 75. So 76 they will tolerate and do just fine in. My community tank is always set at 76. Sometimes it goes up to 77, 78, depending on ambient room temperature, but that only happens in the summertime. So for those of you keeping community tanks and you want to add a Betta to it, keep your water 76 if your other fish will tolerate it. But again, most community fish can fit right in that 76. If your fish will tolerate warmer temperatures, bump it up to 78. But I don't think most community tanks are going to want to go much higher than that. But if your fish can handle 78, I would say that'll be more comfortable for your Betta, and you'll notice a slightly different behavior out of them. The thing with community tanks is you're always trying to find a balance between pH, a balance between temperature, and just an overall balance that all the fish will... you're looking for the Goldilocks effect, basically. Like, where Earth is in the Goldilocks zone to be the perfect habitat for all this life to exist, you're looking for that, basically, in a community tank. So if you're not doing a community tank, then you don't have to worry about this part. I just wanted to be as detailed as I could with why I'm saying 76 for community people. And again, and I know I've said this multiple times now, but I can't stress it enough, this is my opinion based on how I have kept fish. So if this doesn't work for you and you have your own way of doing it, that's great. But this is my opinion on how to keep a community tank with a Betta in it. If you are keeping a Betta alone in its own tank and you're not going to give it any fish tank mates, but you might give it a snail or something, this is going to be the 78 degree temperature people to 80 temperature people. Now all of mine small tanks that have just Bettas in them have preset. Now the preset are rated for 76 plus or minus 4 degrees depending on ambient room temperature. Now for the most part my room is 68 to 60 degrees year round. I have presets from PetSmart, I have presets from Amazon. Most of my Betta tanks stay a consistent 77, 78. So we're talking like 25 C-ish, give or take. Now the ones that are near my computer, because it is hotter on that part of the room, stay around 80, 82. But they do just fine. I just keep up, I do more water changes in them just to make sure nothing gets too crazy in those tanks. Now, for those of you that keep female Bettas or a sorority, and again, those are more of an advanced thing, so this is a select few of you, I would recommend keeping your tanks between 80 and 82. The reason I'm saying keep them at a minimum of 80 is because females will get egg bound, and if they get egg bound, they can die from it. So if you keep your temperature at 80 to 82, that usually helps with them being egg bound. Warmer temperatures help them pass the eggs or reabsorb them, I think, one of the two. Could be both. I'm not really sure how it all works. I just know I increased my temperature and my girls slowly got better. So those are the temperature ranges I'm going to give you guys for your Bettas. I would say go no lower than 76. If for whatever reason you can't find a heater to fit your tank or whatnot, I don't know why you would be able to, but if you can't, try and put the tank in the warmest part of your house, because yes, they can go lower than 76, but they're from the tropical part of Asia. They like warm temperature water. That part of Asia is hot and humid all the time, so the water's not going to be getting super cold there. Okay, so I just did a quick Google search for the water temperatures in Thailand. In January, the coldest it gets is 26.9 C or 81.1 Fahrenheit, and the hottest it gets is 28.5 or 82.7. I'll put a graphical chart here so you guys can actually see, but the temperature ranges from, it looks like 81.1 all the way up to about 87.5 Fahrenheit, so 30.7 at the high end and 26.8 at the low end for Celsius. So it is warm there literally all the time in the water. So they are definitely a warm to hot-ish water fish. So if you can, keep the tank 76 or higher. I wouldn't go past 82 though. That's just me personally. I don't want to cook the fish or shorten their lifespan any more than I have to. Now, when I mentioned observing the fish and finding out what temperatures they're comfortable in earlier when I was talking about temperature, if you have your tank too cold, your fish will let you know. My bettas are all super active. They're always swimming around, looking for stuff, looking for food. They're quote-unquote hunting around their tank. If your water's too cold for them, you're not going to see them moving around very much. They're going to be super lethargic. They're just going to stay in one place. They're going to rest a lot. The warmer the tank, I would guess the higher the metabolism, the more comfortable they are basically. So if you notice your fish is just kind of laying on the same thing all the time or just kind of not moving much, try bumping up the tank a couple degrees, and I almost guarantee you that fish will become more active. If it doesn't, then there's something else wrong with your tank and you have to go back and troubleshoot. So real quick, just to recap, 76 to 82 is the range I would suggest for bettas. More so 78 to 80 if you want to get more technical about it, but it all depends on how you're keeping the betta, what type of tank they're in, if it's a male or a female, if it's a community tank, and whatnot. What do you feed your betta? Now, typically when you go to your PetSmarts and your Petco's, or any fish store really, you go to the betta section, they have them in their cups, they have the tanks that are too small, they have the heaters that are kind of meh, they don't give you filters, and then they have the betta water, and they have the betta water conditioner, and then they have the betta food. Now, I've been doing air quotes this whole time with the word betta in front. There's a reason for that. Most things labeled for bettas aren't really for bettas. You really don't need the water, you don't need special conditioner. You kind of need special food, but you can get away with your regular run-of-the-mill food. So, for food, you're going to want to stick to something that's small. Now, there is a plethora of fish foods out there. You've got Extreme makes a betta pellet, Hikari makes a betta pellet, Tetra, Aquion make betta pellets. You got your more exotic foods like your flubal bug bites, which are also great for bettas. You got your standard flake foods that are for bettas. So a standard tropical flake food, the Tetra tropical flake, they'll eat it, they'll be fine with it. You got the Hikari Betta Bio Gold fish food, which is nice and small. When it comes to betta foods, small is the key word. Their mouths are tiny, so you need a food that is super small. I would say you're going to want to get if you're doing pellets that is, you're going to want to get a food that's no bigger than half the size of a grain of rice. I would say more like a pinhead. You don't want anything too big because then they're going to have to chew on it and they might have trouble swallowing it. So if you're a new time betta keeper and you're looking for a food, I would say pick up a flake food. The Tetra flake works fine. If you want to try a pellet food, I would say try the Hikari betta food. You can try the Extreme. My bettas, it's a little too big, but again, that's fish by fish basis. I would highly recommend the Fluval bug bites. They have a betta formula, nice and small. Either the betta formula, the tropical formula, or the bottom feeder formula. It's going to be fine for your bettas. You can also go the freeze-dried route and do freeze-dried bloodworms. I would recommend Hikari. I've tried a couple other brands and the fish didn't like them as much. If you have access to it, you can do the frozen or live bloodworms even. I've never tried either one, so I can't give my seal of approval on those. I have also used the Hikari freeze-dried tube fix worms before. I'll put the link to I'll put a card up of my top 10 fish foods because I go into more depth on most of these and what you can feed to the bettas. If you go the pellet route, I would say try and find something that's semi-floating, not a rapid sinker. While it is cool to watch them chase the food down, sometimes it can get stuck in the gravel and they won't find it, and then it decays and you have an ammonia problem. So look for a pellet that is small, semi-sinking, and when it comes to how to feed them or how much and how often, my personal recommendation, if you're just starting out keeping a fish in a smaller aquarium, feed them once a day. Feed them 3 to 5 pellets a day. If you don't feel comfortable just feeding them once a day, feed them twice a day. Give them 3 pellets in the morning and 3 pellets when you get home from work or when you're eating dinner. If it's a flake, give them 1 small flake and crumble it up for them. The point is you don't want to overfeed the fish, because then you run into the problems of ammonia and decaying food in the tank. Also, if you overfeed the fish, it's also not good for them either. But I would recommend feeding once or twice a day, no more than 6 pellets a day. Now you're going to say, oh, they look so hungry, I just want to give them a little more food. Trust me, they always look hungry, they're always going to be looking for food no matter what kind of fish it is. But their stomachs are so tiny that they don't need a lot of food. They can go every other day with food. You could go every 3rd day with food. But personally, I feed once a day. If I'm feeling generous, I'll feed twice a day. But most of the time, it's just once a day because I have so many betta tanks to do. That's why I do like the fluval bug bite betta formula, because you pop the lid, you dump it, and it gives you the perfect amount of food for the day, and they're fine and happy. So personally, if I'm recommending betta foods to pick up, if you can get your hands on the fluval bug bites, that would be my top choice. My second choice would be the fluval bottom feeder formula. My third choice would be the fluval tropical formula. These are both for small/medium fish, by the way. If you can't get your hands on either of those, then I would recommend the Hikari Bio Gold betta food. If you can't get your hands on that, everyone's going to have Tetra tropical colored granules or tropical colored flakes. Pick that up, and then you'll be all set. The next question that I've seen asked a lot in groups or heard at pet stores when people are looking at bettas or buying them or see me buying them is, are those that Japanese fighting fish that can't be put with other fish? So for the longest time, when these things first came out, people called them the Siamese fighting fish, the Japanese fighting fish. They really weren't called bettas, they were called the fighting fish. And they got this stigma of they couldn't be put with any other fish or they would just flat out kill them. Now that's true to some degree, that the Betta Splendas do have a tendency to be a little aggressive towards other fish, but it's mostly towards the males. So 2 males cannot go together is usually the rule of thumb. I know there are people that have done it, but most people, so 99% of people that keep these fish, are not going to put 2 males in the same tank. The females, on the other hand, can go in the same tank together. I'll put a card up for my sorority video if you want to go check that out, so I'm not going to go into it too much. They can also go in community tanks with other fish, as long as they're not fin nippers. By fin nippers, I mean fish that will go after their long flowing fins. You can also cut down on any type of predation if you get the more long flowy fins, like the crown tails, the half moons, the tail tails, pretty much all the tail shapes other than the placots and the half moon placots, because they're so sleek and slender like a shark that they can punch things better. I personally have a male betta in all of my tanks except my African cichlid tank and my 2 breeding tanks downstairs. Other than that, all my other tanks have a male betta in them, and there's no problems with aggression or anything. So bottom line is, yes, you can keep bettas with other fish with little to no problems. Personally, I have bettas with hoary cats, various type of tetras, so neons, cardinals, lemons, serpes. I have them with mollies. You gotta watch the mollies though, because they can sometimes be a little mean. Emerald eye rasboras, scissortail rasboras, strawberry rasboras, harlequin rasboras, plecos, algae eaters, danios. But yeah, you can keep them with a variety of things as long as they're not fin nippers. And of course, watch your fish, observe their behavior, see if you have any problem with them. If you have a problem, pull the fish out, have a spare tank so you can put the fish in its own tank. And of course, other tank mates are snails, shrimp. Shrimp is iffy. Some will eat them, some won't. Again, it all comes down to if they're fast enough swimmers to catch the shrimp. If you have shrimplets, the little baby shrimp, they're gonna get eaten probably. And I'll do a more in-depth, like full-on tank mate video. But I'm gonna say if you're a new fish keeper, you have your Betta in your 10-gallon tank, and you want to get something else, I'm gonna steer you more toward the Rasboras. The reason I'm gonna say the Rasboras is because I know sometimes Tetras can be a little nippy with fins. Harlequin Rasboras are super peaceful. The Emerald Eye Rasboras are super peaceful. The Scissortail Rasboras, again, another super peaceful fish. The Strawberry Rasboras are super tiny. They're like a half an inch. Same with Chili Rasboras. You're not going to have any problems with them. If you want to get the Tetras or something else, just keep an eye on them. Make sure your Betta's fins aren't being nipped or anything. But the bottom line is, yes, Bettas can go with other fish. Next thing I want to touch on is plants and other decor. If you're just starting out fish keeping, you're probably a little weary about having live plants in your fish tank. So going off of this is your first fish tank, your first time owning a fish, your first time owning a Betta fish. You're pretty much flying without a net. You've done a little research online. You've watched a couple videos. If you can get your hands on some, get yourself some Java Fern. Java Fern is super easy, low maintenance plant. It'll give your Betta something to lay on. It'll help take out some of the nitrates in your tank. You're going to get yourself a little dab of crazy glue on a rock or a piece of wood or other decor you've picked up, and just put a little dab on that while it's dry. Stick the plant to that and you're all set to go. Now you can also just let the Java Fern rest on top of your substrate. Not bury it though. Just let it sit on top and rest and it'll be fine. With the Java Fern, you don't want to bury it because then it will suffocate the plant. I have some where I've just rested my plants on top of the substrate and they grow wonderful. If you're a little more advanced with plant keeping and fish keeping, I would say get yourself some Anubias to put in there. I say this because in my experience, my Anubiases have melted way back to the point of like I have one little sprig of plant left. And for a first time fish keeper, that's not the most appealing thing to have happen when you're just getting into plant keeping. So our first time fish keepers, stick with the Java Fern. More intermediate people, get yourself some Anubias, play around a little bit. I'm going to say for both of you guys, stay away from your carpeting plants because they take a whole long time before they actually start spreading. And again, that's going to be turn off to some people that are just starting out with plants. You could also throw in a sword. Swords take a long time to grow though, so Java Fern and Anubias would be my two suggestions to people that are just starting out or have been keeping for a little while. Personally, I have Anubias in all of my Betta tanks. I also have guppy grass in some. I have Java moss in there. I have the Java moss Windelow. If you are in the United States and you have access to Aquarium Co-op, I would highly recommend the Christmas moss bridges because those things you can literally just put in there and they're set and forget and they grow. You get this beautiful bush of just moss and it looks wonderful. As for other decors, you can put driftwood in the tank. They like it. They like places to hide, so they're gonna like having it in there. I would say stay away from cholla wood. I have heard horror stories of people getting cholla wood and the Betta tries to swim in the small little hole on either end and they get caught. Then the person has to try and extract the fish without injuring the fish too much or stressing it out to the point where it keels over and dies. So stick with your manzanitas or your other kind of like spidery driftwoods if you want to go the driftwood route. They also will like hiding spots. So if you get like they sell cichlid caves at PetSmart. They look like a elongated egg. They got a smaller hole and a bigger hole. I've turned them on their side and that way they have like a hidey hole they can go to. You can get some rocks and make a nice rock formation for them. But they do like having places they can hide and lay down and relax. And if you don't want to go the real plant route, you can go the fake route. Just take your hand and make sure they're not the cheaper plastic kind because that can hurt their fins if they have the more elongated, flowy fins. You can find them, the silk plants are the best because they're softer, but if you do get the other plastic ones, just make sure they're not super rough to the touch. If they're not, then you're probably fine to use them. Point is just that you don't want them in a tank with nothing because they're going to get stressed out if they don't have a place to hide and get away. Check 1. Tank size. 5 gallon and up. Have a filter on the tank. Have a heater on the tank. Keep the temperature between 76 to 80. Fahrenheit, or 25 to 27 Celsius. Do your weekly water changes, especially if it's a smaller tank. Do at least a 25% change once a week. Make sure you get a nice small food to feed them. Feed them once or twice a day, 3 to 5 pellets a day. Yes, they can have tank mates. No, I would not recommend putting 2 males together. Yes, females can go together. Live plants, you can go with Java Fern if you're new. You can go with the Christmas Moss Bridges from Aquarium Co-op. If you keep plants and you know what you're doing, you can go with other plants. With decor, make sure they have places to hide, either in the form of driftwood, rocks, or other decor things. Just make sure whatever you get isn't super jagged and will not hurt the fish. Didn't cover it in the main video, but they do sell Betta Fix, which is a medicine that can help with the fin damage when you first get them, because a lot of these fish we get at pet stores have a lot of fin damage, and I have used Betta Fix. I've used Melafix and Pimafix too as a substitute if I didn't have the Betta Fix. The Betta Fix to me is somewhat of a scam because it's a smaller container, and if you're treating a 5-gallon tank, you go through one of those little things super quick, so I just like to use the Melafix and Pimafix. Basically the same thing, just slightly different, I think. But of course, making sure your water quality is good will also help reverse the fin damage. Just remember, every fish is different and have their own personality, so some of the stuff I've suggested may not work for your fish. They might not like the foods that mine like. They might not like the same tank mates that I have. So just keep that in mind with whatever you do with your fish keeping, that all fish have their own personalities. So keep an eye on them, have an extra tank in case you need to pull anything out of a community tank. As always, thank you for watching the video. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment down below, share the video if you think it'll help somebody else. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you in the next video.